My name is Margaret Perry, and at 29, I thought I'd found my calling as a cardiac rehabilitation coordinator at Metropolitan General Hospital. For 18 months, I poured my heart into building relationships with patients, developing innovative recovery programs, and quietly documenting everything that went wrong in our understaffed, underfunded department. What my colleagues didn't know was that my late grandmother had left me a substantial inheritance, including a controlling stake in 3 successful medical device companies and a trust fund worth $8 million. I kept this secret, living modestly on my hospital salary, because I wanted to own respect through my work, not my wealth. That decision would prove both painful and ultimately satisfying. The betrayal started small, as these things often do. Dr. Harrison Mitchell, our department head, began excluding me from administrative meetings, claiming I was too detail-oriented for strategic discussions. My direct supervisor, Linda Kowalski, started taking credit for my patient outcome improvements in her monthly reports to administration. But the real knife came from someone I'd trusted completely, my colleague and former friend, David Chen, who I'd mentored when he joined our team 6 months ago. During what I thought was a casual coffee conversation, he casually mentioned that he'd been secretly documenting my emotional outbursts and inappropriate patient attachments to build a case for my removal. The sting of his words was nothing compared to realizing how long he'd been planning this betrayal. What they saw as emotional investment, I knew was simply competent patient care. When Mrs. Rodriguez broke down crying about her medical bills, I didn't just hand her tissues. I connected her with financial aid programs and followed up personally. When Mr. Johnson's family struggled to understand his complex medication regimen, I created customized instruction sheets and called them twice weekly until they felt confident. These weren't weaknesses. They were the foundation of effective healthcare. But in Metropolitan General's toxic culture of cost-cutting and corner-cutting, compassion was viewed as inefficiency. My colleagues saw my dedication to patients as evidence that I lacked the professional distance necessary for leadership. They had no idea that my family's medical device companies had revolutionized cardiac care precisely because we understood that patients weren't just case numbers. The campaign against me intensified over the following months. Dr. Mitchell started assigning me impossible caseloads, then criticizing me when I couldn't complete everything perfectly. Linda began scheduling important meetings during my patient appointments, ensuring I'd miss crucial discussions, then later claiming I was disengaged from department goals. David, meanwhile, continued our friendship facade while carefully documenting every moment I showed genuine concern for a patient's well-being. He'd even started bringing other staff members into his conspiracy, pointing out my excessive follow-up calls and unprofessional emotional investment in patient outcomes. The isolation was suffocating, but I endured it because I genuinely loved helping people recover from cardiac events. I had no idea how perfectly I was being set up for the fall they'd planned. By month 6, the Whisper campaign had reached the hospital's chief administrator, Patricia Williams. She called me into her office on a gray October morning, her expression carefully neutral as she delivered what felt like a prepared speech. "Margaret, we're concerned about your leadership potential," she began, consulting notes that I suspected came directly from David's documentation. "Multiple colleagues have expressed concerns about your emotional regulation and professional boundaries. While we value your clinical skills, we don't believe you have the temperament for advancement in our administrative track." The words hit like physical blows, each one carefully chosen to make me doubt my own perceptions. She recommended I consider transferring to a more suitable, direct patient care role, effectively ending my career aspirations at Metropolitan General. What Patricia didn't know was that my grandmother, Eleanor Perry, had been one of the most successful medical technology entrepreneurs of her generation. The companies I'd inherited, Perry Medical Solutions, Advanced Cardiac Systems, and Rehabilitation Technologies, Inc., supplied equipment to over 60% of hospitals in our metropolitan area, including Metropolitan General. My trust fund manager had been quietly acquiring additional shares in healthcare companies for years, making me an influential stakeholder in the very industry that was trying to push me aside. I'd kept this secret because I wanted to prove myself on merit alone. But watching my colleagues systematically undermine everything I'd worked for was teaching me that merit meant nothing without power. The time for idealistic anonymity was rapidly approaching its end. The final insult came during our department's annual review meeting in November. Patricia had invited board members to observe our presentations, ostensibly to showcase our achievements. I'd prepared a comprehensive analysis of our program improvements, complete with patient outcome data and cost-effectiveness projections. But when I arrived, I discovered that David had been given my presentation slot and was already halfway through delivering my research as his own work. He stood confidently at the podium, citing statistics I'd compiled and recommendations I'd developed, while Linda and Dr. Mitchell nodded approvingly from the audience. The board members were clearly impressed with his innovative approaches to patient care. When I quietly protested to Patricia afterward, she dismissed my concerns as professional jealousy and suggested I focus on being a team player rather than seeking individual recognition. That evening, I made the call I'd been avoiding for months. Within hours, my family's attorney had compiled a comprehensive dossier on Metropolitan General's financial relationships with our companies. The hospital owed Perry Medical Solutions nearly $2 million for recent equipment purchases, with another $4 million in contracts scheduled for the coming year. Advanced Cardiac Systems had an exclusive maintenance agreement for their cardiac catheterization lab, worth $6 million annually. Most importantly, the hospital's accreditation depended on meeting certain patient outcome standards they were currently failing to meet in cardiac rehabilitation. My secretly documented improvements in patient recovery rates and readmission reductions were the only things standing between Metropolitan General and a potential loss of their cardiac care certification. The irony was delicious. They were trying to eliminate the person whose work was literally keeping their program viable. The perfect opportunity for revelation came 3 weeks later. Metropolitan General was hosting their annual Donor Appreciation Gala, a black tie event designed to court wealthy benefactors and community leaders. As one of their rising stars, David had been selected to present our department's achievements to potential donors. I'd received a perfunctory invitation as general staff, clearly not expected to attend. But that evening, I walked into the hotel ballroom wearing a designer gown that cost more than most attendees made in a month, accompanied by my attorney and the regional president of the American Heart Association, who happened to be an old family friend. The recognition in Patricia's eyes when she saw me was immediate and terrifying. She'd done her homework too late. She now knew exactly who I was and what I represented. David was midway through his presentation when I requested permission to address the audience. Patricia tried to deflect, but the AHA president's presence made refusal impossible. I walked to the podium with a tablet containing 18 months of meticulously documented evidence. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I'd like to share the real story behind these impressive statistics." What followed was a methodical dismantling of the fraud that had been perpetrated against me. I showed emails where David asked for my research to review, then presented that same research as his own work. I displayed Linda's reports that credited her with patient outcome improvements while simultaneously filing complaints about my excessive patient care. I revealed Dr. Mitchell's systematic exclusion of me from meetings where my own program innovations were discussed and implemented. But the real devastation came when I revealed my identity and the financial leverage it provided. Some of you may not know that Perry Medical Solutions, Advanced Cardiac Systems, and Rehabilitation Technologies, Inc. are family companies, I said, watching faces pale throughout the audience. Companies that have been proud partners with Metropolitan General for over a decade. Companies whose equipment and maintenance contracts represent nearly $12 million annually to this hospital. The silence was deafening as the implications sank in. Board members began frantically checking their phones, no doubt receiving urgent messages from their legal and financial advisors. Patricia looked physically ill as she realized the magnitude of the situation they'd created. David had gone completely white, finally understanding that his victim had never been powerless. The consequences were swift and merciless. Within 48 hours, David had been terminated for falsifying research presentations and violating professional ethics standards. Linda was demoted and transferred to a satellite clinic after an internal investigation revealed a pattern of credit theft and subordinate harassment. Dr. Mitchell faced a formal censure from the medical board and lost his department head position. Patricia received a vote of no confidence from the hospital board and announced her early retirement within the month. But the most satisfying consequence was watching the entire cardiac rehabilitation program nearly collapse without my documented improvements and patient relationship management. Readmission rates spiked, patient satisfaction scores plummeted, and the program faced immediate accreditation review. 3 months later, I returned to Metropolitan General, not as a coordinator, but as the new director of cardiac services appointed directly by the board of directors. My first act was implementing the comprehensive patient-centered care model I'd developed in secret, backed by substantial investment from my family's companies. The program became a regional model for cardiac rehabilitation excellence, attracting patients and physicians from across the state. My former colleagues who had participated in the campaign against me found themselves either transferred to less desirable positions or quietly encouraged to seek employment elsewhere. Those who had remained neutral or supported me behind the scenes were promoted and given leadership opportunities in the expanding program. The personal satisfaction was immense, but the professional impact was even greater. My story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of assuming someone's powerlessness based on their apparent circumstances. Speaking engagements at medical conferences allowed me to address systemic issues of workplace discrimination and the importance of merit-based advancement. The Perry Foundation, established with part of my inheritance, now provides grants to support healthcare workers facing similar professional sabotage. Most importantly, our cardiac rehabilitation program saved hundreds of lives over the following years, proving that emotional investment in patient care wasn't a weakness. It was the foundation of medical excellence. Looking back, I realized that keeping my wealth secret had been both naive and necessary. Naive because it allowed colleagues to underestimate and mistreat me far longer than they would have dared otherwise. Necessary because it revealed their true characters and gave me the moral authority to exact perfect revenge. Margaret Perry, the modest coordinator, could be dismissed and betrayed. Margaret Perry, the millionaire medical device heiress, demanded respect and got justice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad. It's letting people destroy themselves with their own greed and assumptions, while you document everything and wait for the perfect moment to reveal exactly who they've been underestimating.